Don't we all love a little bit of retro gaming? X-Men 97 continues, episode 4, which is kind of two things. Well, no, it's definitely two things. It's weird. So this is Motendo slash Life Death Part 1. I'm going to talk about the fact that they kind of presented it this way in the first place. And like, I'll say up front, it's been way too long since I've seen original X-Men. I can't remember if they ever did this kind of within a single episode doing a split story like this. So I don't know if this is carrying on a tradition from the 90s series or not. If it is, then I would say it was something maybe better left behind. And if it's not, it's an even stranger choice to me. But let's deal with these. Let's deal with the first one. And then in talking about the second one, I'll talk a little bit more about the format because I think the second story the first story benefits from the format. The second story kind of suffers from it. I'll try to explain as I go. So Motendo is a focus on Jubilee and newcomer Sunspot. So it's nice to see Jubilation and Roberto sort of continuing to bond and get along. Roberto start to loosen up a little bit because he's got a lot of hangups, which that's accurate. The whole thing. Well, first of all, bringing back Mojo. I like Mojo in general. Like I've liked Mojo since the 90s, and it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly why. There's just something about his look and his gimmick that I just enjoy. I don't know. It just works for me. Usually, when they initially started him looking almost kind of deflated, I was like, why'd they go with that redesign? But then it kind of goes with the idea that like his size and his bulk is kind of tied to how successful his ratings are because that's kind of what sustains him. And then he like kind of bulked back up. I'm like, oh, okay. Because he looks better in his original design. We got little glimpses of Spiral, who is a character that I like, so I was down for that. While I do have some appreciation of the retro gaming aspect, because Nintendo 6, not Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, God, I can't think this morning. Super Nintendo, that's like my real wheelhouse. My true formative years of gaming, that was Super Nintendo, and I adore that stuff. I adore 16-bit. It does some stuff directly evocative of brawlers and beat-em-up games of the time, and I do enjoy that retroness. I'm glad they only gave it half an episode, though. That's what I mean by it benefits from the format, because I don't think this would have sustained a full episode very interestingly. And even as it is, half an episode length, it's still stretched a little thin. Like, while the retro look to the games is fun for me, the retro messaging around, don't get sucked into games, enjoy the real world. It's like, yeah, I've been hearing that one for over 30 years. Not that I'm saying it's a completely irrelevant message, but you're delivering in the trite way that I heard 30 years ago. I don't have nostalgia for the moralizing. I only have nostalgia for the gaming aesthetic. Though also, but I don't know if I'm the only one who's annoyed at this. I was genuinely disappointed that Jubilee faces Magneto at the end of that segment, or towards the end, before Mojo shows up and she has to deal with him. When Magneto's there, and like I like that they had the crummy digitized voice, I am Magneto. But then he stopped. He didn't say the next part. If you ever played the arcade game, the X-Men arcade game, it was badly translated, like a lot of stuff in the arcades. I am Magneto, master of magnet. How do you not have him say the second half? How? How do you... It was right there. I was unaccountably disappointed by that. It was like, what are we even doing here? If you're not going to pull that, why? Why are we even here? Why are we doing this? That would have been the whole point, as far as I'm concerned. I know that sounds weird. The whole idea of a digital duplicate of Jubilee sort of being used to run the beta and sticking around, that was kind of a fun idea. And it was a neat way to get her to interact with somebody a little bit older than her. I did not like how that fed into the moralizing around video games and kids need to go outside kind of stuff that it was doing. But it was overall a neat idea, and sort of Jubilee seeing like stuff that she could do, ways of using her abilities that she doesn't currently know how to do, that also will kind of encourage her to do what Magneto was suggesting, to make use of the Danger Room and stuff like that. So, like, for a neat little package, a little bit of character development and moving things a little bit forward for Roberto, and giving Jubilee sort of that moment of, I just kind of want to be a kid and have fun, but also reminding her, yeah, but stuff that you got a lot of stuff to deal with too. Like, that's fine and all, but you know, you need to get better at your powers, and here's what you could do. Like, it's fine. It's fun and it's fine. Unfortunately, I think this format hurts the second half, Life Death, which is a focus on Forge and Storm. First of all, let me just say, I like Forge and Storm. I like them as a couple. I always have. I like them a heck of a lot more than Storm and T'Challa, if I'm being honest. That always felt very arbitrary, that pairing, to me. Whereas Forge and Storm, they fit well together. I like them together. Anyways, seeing them sort of start to get to know each other, and when I say this is hurt by the format, so, like, how do I want to explain this? The exact shape of my opinion on this is going to depend slightly on what the next episode looks like, i.e., whether the next episode is entirely Life Death Part 2, and that's the whole episode, or if it does another split episode where Life Death Part 2 is like the second half of that episode, or like the first half of that episode, and then the second half is another like short one-off like this. In which case, why not just pair off the two short bits and let Life Death be its own entire episode? Or, more importantly to me, if Life Death Part 2 is the entirety of the next episode, then Part 1 should have been the entirety of this episode, because while I would agree that, yes, back in the 90s, doing the full episode on the slow building of this adult relationship between two characters probably would not have gone over great with the young audience at the time. They probably would have been bored. The main audience for this are people who watched that. I think the audience would have stood up for, and would have been fine, and if you did it well, I think would have even really enjoyed the slow build of the relationship of these two. And I honestly think, because Forge saying that he loves her feels slightly rushed, and it might not have if we'd had the full episode to really see that bond grow. As it is, it feels more like him idolizing her, and like, dude, you don't know her that well. You've just put her on a pedestal. When I think it would be more meaningful to give their relationship more time and more depth. Of course, you know, I don't know if the next episode will be nothing but the second half of this, or if it'll be another weird breakup like I mentioned. But I don't think that... I get why the first story is as short as it is. Like, that would not have sustained a whole episode. This honestly could have sustained a whole episode by itself, to say nothing of just adding it to its second part, depending on how long that is next time. So this episode, I think, partially because of the format wonkiness, I think this is the weakest episode so far. And again, that, like, the formatting might be a nod back to the 90s. They might have done this back then, and I just don't remember. Or they did it after I stopped watching, because it's not like I watch it religiously. There's plenty of episodes of the original series I haven't seen, especially in the later end of it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, while I understand this exists because of nostalgia, and I am making some allowances, like certain overwrought acting choices, you know, from the voice actors and some stuff like that. I'm making some allowances for it just trying to very much evoke a thing of the time. There's other things like, I don't think anyone would have clamored for that. If you just hadn't done that, I don't think anyone would have asked for it or said they were missing it. But then again, that's assuming it even is a callback, which it might not be. Although if it's not, I really don't get why you'd do this. I don't know. It's just an odd choice to me. But the show overall, still good, still fun. And I'm excited to see what else it's got. I do appreciate giving Jubilee and Roberto some focus, but not giving them the whole episode, because, you know, the teen newbies usually aren't the most interesting ones, and but there is also value in having them there. So this seems like a good way to split that difference. So like I said, first story benefits from its shortness. Second one is kind of hurt by it, because I think a little bit slower, a little more weight, a little bit more depth, it could have really been something. As it is, it's the first half of maybe what'll be something. We'll see. But I think even on its own, it could have really been something. Just letting it pace itself more gradually. I'm probably alone in that assessment. I'm the weirdo with weird critiques. But in any case, you seen the latest episode? That's actually 2 episodes. That's actually 1.5 episodes. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here. So you can just come on back next time you need a break. Time for me to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B, Turok, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Ruth, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris. That was a new one, that's why I paused. Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Robin Powell, Twisted Wishes, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pau Barabajagel, and Mara G. If you want to support me as well and help keep these little buggers fed, check out my Patreon. Thanks so much.